everything in our life has energy. If a behavior that you want to let go, quote unquote, is present, has a big charge of energy. Why we would let that go? We understand it fully, we gain the knowledge of it, and now that behavior is a big charge to repack our life force. And with that, then the sky is the limit. One thing that takes a moment to my students to grasp is that we don't get rid of anything. We don't get rid of any. Everything is integrated. Everything is transmuted into raw energy, and from there, there's a whole being that emerges.
Welcome to Don't Step on the Bluebells, the podcast where personal healing and transformation take center stage. I'm your host, Amanda Parker, and I'm a fellow seeker on the journey of personal growth. Join me as I delve into the stories of gifted healers, guides, and everyday people who have experienced remarkable transformations. Listen in as they share their practical wisdom to enrich your everyday life. And don't forget to hit subscribe and never miss a new episode. Welcome to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells. I'm here with the incredible Teo Alfero, and we are going to be discussing a lot of really incredible insight and wisdom about the type or the special breed of shamanic practice that he practices. Teo is a spiritual teacher, a trusted mentor, and an advisor to many world-leading politicians and people of great influence in the world. And he's also the author of Wolf Connection. And the latest book that he can put his name on is called Transmission, which is also sharing a lot of stories from master students of his. So I am so thrilled that you have agreed to be here with me today, Teo. And I really cannot wait to dive in and understand much more about the special work that you're bringing into the world.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Amanda.
I heard about your work a couple of years, well, it's been a few years back already, only spoken with the highest praise. So your name gets around by people who are really inspired by what you do. And I would say a few years ago, I might not have fully understood what you do. But as it is today, I'm following my own path of, let's say, personal awakening and spiritual development. So I'm starting to lean into this world a bit more, but I would love to hear in some of your own words, who are you in the world? What is it that you're bringing out in the rest of us?
Well, that's a deep question. So a number of ways to answer. From the point of view of this work, I am everybody and I'm no one. I carry a specific body of training that allows me to open gates for my students, for people in positions of influence and the responsibility to make big decisions for a lot of people. And yet I'm the one that comes in and out of the room and things happen, but not in the forefront, which is one of the precepts of this work. We don't beat our own drum too much. For context, I'm South American, and I came to the States to study the work of a renowned teacher and shaman and author by the name of Carlos Castaneda, that was very prominent in the 60s, 70s, 80s, also controversial at times. And but the controversy never touched me, in the sense that I found the work to be true, to be deep, to be transformative, and I stay with that. I stay with what I knew to be true to me, and I discarded all the shenanigans, politics, gossip, and all of that. So that was in the 90s, and in the early 2000s, I became a teacher of that work. I taught. I was part of a team teaching all over the world. And eventually I found the need to create something grassroots. I mean, I felt that these high-level transformational technologies were not touching those that needed most. So I created this organization, this Wolf Sanctuary called Wolf Connection 15 years ago, to bottom line, to make this work available to people in the inner city, people in youth in foster care, veterans, people in real pain, if you will. And I dedicated the last 15 years of my life to that work, and never breathing a word of shamanic work. And this is it's an organization that grew from grassroots to being nationally recognized and carrying a bunch of high number of government contracts and longitudinal studies and peer reviews and stuff like that. So talking about shamanism as the basics of that program was not appropriate at the time. All the while keeping a small group of students that I continued serving and mentoring over all these years. Who am I in the world? I'm a consciousness teacher. I founded the school that I started is called the International School for Applied Consciousness and Shamanic Studies. And the word that I like the most from that entire title is the word applied consciousness.
Mm.
So the work that we do is not to sit on the top of the mountain and rejoice in one's divinity, but nothing wrong with that. But once we do that, the consciousness that we grow is applied in our everyday life, and for extra brownie points, makes a difference on other people too, not only yours. So my over the years, my specialty has become mentoring people with great decision power over other people, and also teaching teachers, teaching people that have already achieved a degree of training and expertise in the area of medicine work or intimacy or tantric work or so forth, and then I help them reach a next level.
That is super fascinating because before we had met the first time, when I was looking up who you were, because I had heard so many stories just about the wonderful work you were doing with the wolf connection, and that was what I could find, only about the wolf
Yeah.
connection. And once I launched the podcast, a mutual contact of ours said, Amanda, I really think you should speak with Teo. I think this is going to be a good conversation, but I still didn't really know why. So I'd love to know why now. What's changed that in this moment of time, it feels more important to maybe bring some of these messages to the forefront?
Well, one of the things had to do with my own personal timing. I'm also a father, a husband. I apply the work that I do, so I apply consciousness in everyday activities. It's a matter of degrees. I mean, I've been doing this work for almost 30 years now. So it's not now; it's a matter of degrees. I mean, for the last 15, for the first 10 or so, or I was fully this, just traveling the world and doing big workshops and seminars and stuff like that. Then with Wolf Connection, it became a small boutique teaching activity on the side while I was in the world pushing forward a message and a mission, helping those that needed it most. I mean, we served thousands of youth, and mostly youth, but some veterans and people in drug treatment programs and so forth. That made a huge difference as well. And now I just recently retired as the director of the charity last year. So I'm find myself with more time to write again, write more, teach at a higher level. Um, Look, this quest for awakening and enlightenment is not new. I mean, part of the assemblage of reality of humans is this concept that now is the time to awaken. The only reason it's now is because I'm here. It's now the time for me. For thousands of years, our ancestors have been intrigued and occupied and focused on their consciousness expansion, the spiritual awakening, their reclaiming of cosmic connection that we all carry as a birthright. And typically, because of the effect of our modern life, we tend to forget about that. But that's part of the design. The design is that we are full consciousness, we embody to forget it all and then reclaim it all until we become full consciousness again and integrated, right? But that's the cosmic joke. So we can talk about the state of the world, the worst and the best in the world. This is differentiating more and more and creating some polar opposites. But that's been the case in some degree or another for millennia, and certainly all our modern world that we can discuss in the last few hundred years have had a huge opportunity for awakening. Why is now? I mean, like, that saying, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Is why is now? Because it's the second best time.
Well, I think a lot of people are also probably, for better or worse, more exposed through, social media
Yeah.
channels, or there's just more access to information.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the depth of wisdom being shared is always at the highest level. I think there's a lot of like disembodied bits and pieces of information that we can find online, which creates probably more confusion and chaos,
Yeah.
but at the same time gives a hint that there's something else. And for anyone who's really looking to dig deeper into that, and if you believe, which I do, that you almost get not a calling specifically, but you're called to it. It feels like the right moment. You're
Yeah.
intrigued enough to look into it or to find a teacher, then you will.
Yeah.
Then you will actually go on that search.
Yes, certainly we are in sometimes in. I think the millennial generation has pushed, catapulted us forward on our spiritual renaissance, for better or worse. So there are ways to describe this. There are true teachers in the world, like they always been, and then it's a matter of degrees. I mean, let's say I'm a runner, right? And there's some people, like some of my students, are world class ultra marathons, 100, 150-mile marathons, right? I get tired of driving 150 miles. These guys run it and run it up and down mountains, 150 miles. And then is the runner that runs the Olympic marathon, and then is me, that I used to run Olympic marathons, and now I can run a couple of miles just to keep it. And then is the one that walks around the park. It's the same with consciousness, right? And except for the one walking, everyone else call themselves a runner. So everyone else, I mean, so in the terms, and many times, if you experience of running is a couple of miles around the park, you're very happy with yourself. You think that you run 2 miles, and then you run
That's
you
pretty
run
good.
you run 3, and then you run 4, and you're really improving, right? Very rarely you go like, well, me in comparison with the 150-mile ultra marathon runner, I'm crap, right? I mean, rarely that comparison comes, right? Typically, we say, well, with the guy that is overweight, I can't get off the chair, I'm great. That's what That's more the comparison than the other one. So, in terms of consciousness, it's similar. Some people that can walk around the park, they feel the progress, and some people can jog around the park, the consciousness park, and they feel that great progress. And the added value with consciousness is that it is more ethereal to measure than miles, running miles. So not having a clear reference point of the degree in which we can advance consciousness speaking, it's easy to get confused with thinking that we got somewhere, that now
Mm.
I can teach this stuff, that now I can go talk to people and do lectures or become a coach, or which is nothing wrong with. I mean, I really admire that enthusiasm and that initiative. For those that don't have a good reference point, can be tricky to gauge, right? So then we have this aspect. That aside, then we have this aspect of the human existence, the human condition, if you will, which includes, from the perspective of this tradition, this concept of self-reflection, meaning everything in the world is about moi, right? That's how we walk
That's
through the.
that's a good definition of self-reflection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we walk through the world as a reference point to us. So one of the deepest pieces of this work is to revert that mirror, revert that mirror. That energy that comes. Oh, everything comes to me. Well, so it's an energy transformation that needs to happen, where everything comes through me, not to me. And that distinction makes all the difference in the world. So now, let's say, a somewhat novice, a seeker, begins to look for the initial teachings, and they will find some transcendental meditation, silent practices, beautiful, and then some basic concepts of love, forgiveness, compassion, abandon. You can't love others if you don't love yourself. All the kindergarten stuff. Fantastic. We need to start somewhere. That self-reflection will, depending on the personality of the person, that self-reflection will make it, oh, I suck at this, or I'm great at this. Neither one of them have any difference energetically. The one that suck will hide. The one I'm great will print some pamphlets and a business cards and start teaching it while they still in kindergarten. And that's what we see a lot of. People that have done a couple of weekend workshops, that have done a little coaching certification or something like that, and they begin, which is, again, I admire those people. They're getting their asses off the chair, they doing something. The one piece that I would add is some degree of self-examination around where we truly are in the path, so we don't get ahead of ourselves. For instance, if you learn, let's say, a coaching process, goal orienting, personal organizing, goal setting, whatever that is, and then you walk people as a beginner coach. You walk people through that process, A to C. You start with these bullet points, and then milestones, and then accountability. Blah. Great, you're helping people. Great. Now, once you think you can add to that some spiritual connection practices, or that those initial spiritual practice is not spiritual, is really emotional and psychological fine-tuning. We call it spiritual, but spiritual is non-human. We go into spirit, by definition, is non-human. So as long as we're dealing with our hang-ups and all these concepts of limiting beliefs and filters and all that, that's all in the realm of human existence. That is not a spiritual work. That's personal transformation, healing work, all very valid, but we call different things what they are. The moment, as a coach or as a practitioner of any kind, of a yoga instructor, or whatever that is, we begin to step into the realms of assisting someone in some kind of awakening. You need to be prepared to deal with what you are eliciting. And initially, for most people, what you're going to elicit is some kind of emotional and psychological breakout. They're gonna, it's gonna be some kind of surfacing, and that's where the danger now resides. The danger resides on people touching, tiptoeing around the edges of something that they're not fully prepared to handle. And now you have people that went to retreats and came back a little traumatized, or things came up and then they're a little dysfunctional in their lives for a period of time until they can reset, or they did this regression process or meditation or whatever that was. Breath work is super potent, right? Sometimes you teach people to do some breath work, all kinds of shit stuff could come up, and then you need to be able to hold the space. So one of the areas that I train my students most intensely is in what I call energy capacity, which includes an array of meanings. Mostly, I'm talking about building our energy field, packing it up with energy, like compressing the density of the energy field, which upgrades your emotional capacity, your intellectual capacity, and psychological, in order to handle anything that comes your way. And as a matter of degrees. But the ultimate goal is that nothing will overwhelm. I mean, the word overwhelming is not, it doesn't exist in my training. I mean, it's not, all we talk is about capacity. That I give you a long answer to a short question, but that's the
It's a
context.
beautiful, beautiful answer, because I don't even remember what the question was, if I'm honest, but I loved what you were just describing. I think that, just sharing a bit from my own experience, when I first started to experience the world of spirit and energy, it was through the training I did as a Reiki healer. And it was the first exposure I had to something I really didn't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, maybe as a child and when I was younger, I had moments of intuition and connection and things like that. But this was really a moment of feeling something physically that I knew was also in the spiritual plane, but didn't have the words for it and didn't really know how to get more information. And I think I spent so many years trying to just understand and to find my way around, what does this mean? What else is there? Because to me, then, okay, Reiki is everything because this is what I had experienced. This was my door opener. My Reiki teacher is a very powerful healer. So she has a lot of tools up her sleeve. And of course, took me through a process of like the beginning and then moving through that. But that was also part of the motivation, really. Well, yeah, that is really a lot of the motivation for creating Don't Step on the Bluebells, which is it was such a journey to just get words for what I was experiencing and didn't fully understand. And through that, I met a lot of different kinds of healers and guides, some with, decades of experience, really incredible, incredible healers. I'm sure there's more words that I could be using, and some who maybe have 5 or 10 years of experience, but are doing exactly as you say, starting that guidance process. And I guess it's just fascinating to hear, because when you're just starting and you just reach this touching of something else, you don't know there's a path and you
Right.
don't know how far along on that path you are.
Yeah.
So probably a lot of people who are just starting to touch what I would call the mystical, they're hungry for more and they have no idea how wide or how deep that can really go.
Yeah. Well, once you open the gates of spirit, it's it's literally infinite. Decades of practice until the day you die, you're still touching a minuscule amount by definition. We are you and I microbes within a microbe species, within a microbe planet, in a microbe solar system, in a microbe galaxy, in a sea of galaxies. That's also the humility of understanding the magnitude of what's available and the non-linear way in which we can access it all, and we still in this small little sliver, incredible beauty. Now what you're describing is the natural awakening process of an initiate. We know that something is there, and but hold on, what was that? What was that? What did I was feeling with, but and these feelings are beyond words. That's why it's difficult to find the words. And so we speak in metaphors, we keep in sensations, we speak in sensations, we speak in describing currents of energy. But the thing that we're trying to describe is beyond words. It's prior to words. It's larger than words. It's non-human, and yet constitutes everything we are. So yeah, I mean, and it is a good 5 to 10 years before you get a clue.
Mm. Well, I was fortunate enough to have Sandra Ingerman on the podcast recently. She is full of wisdom. I mean, she's really an elder in her own practice of shamanism, and she's helped many, many people also to get on that pathway, but just through the healing work that she does. And she was sharing in that conversation about, actually, she was using the initiation, the same word that you just used as well, and how in ancient societies or shamanic communities, you would have had more of an initiation with elders guiding you. So you would have had people who were actually supporting you through that process. And in modern society, we don't have as much of that. And that's why a lot of people are, as you say, going and having these experiences. And then all of a sudden there's this awakening, but they don't know what to do with that energy, or they don't know how to handle maybe trauma that's come up or just experiences that can't be described. So I find that also just really fascinating to think about, the cosmic world. I forget the exact word you use, cosmic universe, and how that applies in a modern context that's, pretty much addicted to technology in the worst case, right? That we are just getting snippets of this information and don't necessarily have someone like you, or perhaps like Sandra Ingerman, in your day to day life to help guide you along this path of, hey, here's what's happening in your life right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also we have a different set of motivations. What moves the human race is different than this quest for awakening and knowledge. So we settle with information rather than knowledge, and we settle with stimulus instead of awakening. So a lot to say about this. So in one sense, I fully agree with this person that you. I mean, she studied with Michael Hartner, right? That's from that school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So um, in one way, we're not purposefully initiated, yet we are creatures of initiation and creatures of ritual. So we are initiated by default constantly into a bunch of different things. I mean, every part of our lives, we receive an initiation of how. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't know how to do life, right? So we've been initiated into a certain way of being that has to do with everything we see around, except for in our ancestors and in more ancient societies, except for the shamans and the medicine people and the priests that were purposefully initiated into this path. The initiation that was available to everybody was similar to a baptism or a bar mitzvah or something on those lines, you know, and and now it's more ritualistic, a little more. It has lost some of the meaning. Some cultures still retain to a degree. It was part of the way of life to be have an intrinsic relationship with the world around them. The reason why all these initiations, is even the current ones in the areas of spirituality, have a lot to do with nature, because nature for our ancestors was very prevalent. They lived in nature. We have removed ourselves from nature, so now we need to go back to nature to do the initiation. But the trees and the plants and the animals and the river and the mountain, that was where they lived every day and interact with every day, and that's why it was so relevant. And then they prepared initiations where you have the puberty initiation at 11, 12, 13 years old, and then you have the into adulthood initiation and 17, 18, 19, and then you have into the community leader, warrior initiation a little later, and then the community leader in your perhaps 20s or early 30s, and then you become specialized, and some of those will become council members, and then some of those, and one or two of those will become tribal leaders, so the ultimate elders and leaders of the community. So it's from many becomes, they keep being initiated into different levels. Those initiations, depending on the culture, required certain feats of prowess, go and kill the lion, or find water, or that kind of stuff, or find shelter for the tribe, or hunting grounds. In other cases, required study, like in the cases of Eastern traditions. You have these big monasteries with scrolls and ancient knowledge that they had to study, memorize, and recite in order to pass their initiation and so forth. In some cases, were huge feasts of physical pain and hardship, sweat lodges, and sun dancing, and vision questing, and that kind of stuff. So we have replaced that with other things. I mean, have replaced that with distraction. I mean,
Mm,
the initiation for a young person today is that they receive their phone. That's an initiation.
mm,
Initiation is the first time that they discover sexuality, peer guided, typically not by some other kids at school or whatever, and or siblings, that they get initiated into the puberty. The phone, the leaving home to go to college, that's an initiation, and that's typically marked by getting drunk and partying, and so we have created our initiations that are a little decadent in many ways, and that's the world we live in. In ancient times, the initiation had a purpose. People went through the hardship for, first it was social recognition and standing. They gained the respect and the acceptance, respect and acceptance of their community at a certain level. Today, the acceptance and respect is gained by how drunk you can get in college, and I still walk the whatever, and then how new and good is your phone and your shoes in elementary school, and the whole thing. So that's how they gain respect and inclusion. Today, to convince the modern person to undertake an initiation of a spiritual nature, is a little trickier. And the only reason I've seen had to do with naturally occurring hardship, the hardship of our ancestors was ritualistic in nature. You do a sweat lodge, you do a sun dance, you hang yourself upside down, like Shaolin monks. So it was ritualistic in nature, was controlled. Here, the hardship that unfortunately some people need in order to turn to a spiritual initiation has to do with sometimes um, a health episode, rough relationship breakup, bankruptcy, addiction, things that kind of trash their lives, to go, okay, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to look at something bigger than me and for guidance. A selected few, in my opinion, have the calling, like in your case. I mean, I don't know your life, but it seems like you as a kid were having these insights and this, and then some seed was planted somewhere that continue having um, this curiosity for something else, something bigger, something beyond what meets the eye every day. And then eventually you found your Reiki training, which is fantastic training, and it's a matter of degrees how good the teachers are. But if you found a good teacher, like it seemed you did, then you received a very structured, very well curated, and very effective healing modality. You know, that people that have the yearning,
Mm.
and that's a sight to see, because it's not necessary really to for your life to come apart in order to be initiated.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because I think, yeah, it can often come through hardship, and I guess maybe that's even sensationalized. A lot of people that follow who, have spiritual works have often come at it from addiction, or something happened that they were forced into surrender. And from that grew a connection or a knowing, or something else came from that. But it could also come potentially from enchantment and just following that thread. I mean, maybe one is easier. I don't know. Maybe the hardship
It is.
awakening actually is the quicker route.
It is. It is. It is.
Oh, good.
Because
Good
it
to
creates
know. Well,
it creates an interruption that is so severe. Someone having an accident, having you know big injuries, or a near death experience, a heart attack. It creates a stop. I mean, death will create a stop that not other feature in our life will create in order to create to elicit that shake, right, and that destabilization. Yes, and obviously I don't wish it on anybody. So the longer path, the path of the curious exciting person, that will require the in many ways, many times, the ritualistic hardship. So then you go into practices.
oh God, I need a sweat lodge, don't I?
Well, swallowage would be one of them, and ritualistic practices, like in the case of the training that I do, has to do with a very rigorous review of one's life, for instance, and then the way I run ceremonies that are energetically very intense, and I create an environment, a particular setting for my students during ceremony that they feel that they're going to explode, literally. I mean, that their skin is going to rip and it's going to explode. And then if we continue building that grinding energy, that creates a sensation that you could die in that moment. You could, right? And it's obviously no physical hardship of any kind. There's no touch of any kind. It's all an energetic work. So, and that creates that jump in consciousness and jump in consciousness that will be allowed, that will open the doors for this self-reflection to loosen up, right, to subside a little bit, just long enough for a moment for us to stick a foot in the door and begin that process.
Now you're bringing me back to my curiosity about your particular brand of healing, and the work that you do. So I know that you wear many different hats, and you have. I'd love to hear, and you are free to shape the question, but you are a teacher of, for lack of a better word, deep shamanic practice. And I know that this book, which I'm really happy to showcase here, so your latest book, Transmission, anyone who's watching a video of this can actually see the cover of, showcases master students of yours who you've been working with, I believe, for 7 years now. Maybe
They are in
some.
that course. I mean, that book was written at the 4 year mark.
So these are students, all women, in particular in this group, who are sharing these different levels of like really awakening to their own courage and power and strength under your tutelage. So I'd love to hear from you if you can describe a bit what is that as far as your healing practice, that kind of teaching as a practice of healing. How could you describe that so that someone who's maybe really not familiar with this work at all would be able to understand?
Well, explanations typically fail to convey the depth of the experience. In that book, I wrote an introduction that I describe 12 areas of work and deepening that are part of the journey. That they go anywhere from this process of recapitulation, which I'll explain in a moment, which is a very detailed review of one's life. And when I say that, people may interpret it as some kind of psychological rehashing or therapy or recounting or regression. There's none of that. I'll explain it more. All the way to shape shifting and conscious dreaming, the ability to walk in this world and other worlds simultaneously. So the complexity of the practices increases significantly over time. Everything starts with emptying the vessel, if you will. So this process of recapitulation, no one does anything else with me until we get a certain degree of understanding and mastery in that practice. So that practice is been carried down from generation to generation of practitioners in this and sorcerers and teachers in this lineage, back all the way to ancient Mexico, the Central Valley of Mexico for the most part, and is an energetic recalibration of one's life experiences. So what this is imagine that seers see the human being not as a physical body with arms and heads and the torso, but as an egg of light, as a ball of light. This ball of light has includes the physical body and includes those energy fields that Reiki describes in a different way as energy fields that contain the sources of our health and well-being and longevity, as well as a detailed file of every thought we've ever had, every emotion we've ever felt, every action we've ever took, every word we ever spoken, every place you've ever been, every person we've ever met. So the practice of recapitulation starts with a formal review, like pen and paper, writing down some people that you met in reverse chronological order. For you, your first person on your list would be me, and then whoever you met yesterday. You configure that list, and it can be in sections and explain more in a moment. And then initially is a practice of memory. Who do you remember? Along this process, there was a distinct milestone reached where this energy body, this energy field awakens and takes over the process. For the practitioner, that feels that's a distinct change between trying to remember and then being flooded with memories that you don't know where they're coming from. To the detail, we begin to experience the scent and the visuals and the kinesthetic sensations and the sounds like you are there, or even more intensely than being there, because all your senses are now awakened much more than our state of consciousness at the time. What this does is see the luminous sphere, the luminous egg. They see here mostly from the midsection, from the belly area, little hairs, infinite amount of hairs of golden light, green and blue, but golden, a lot of them. A linear description would be these lines pierce space and time, connected to every one of those people and places and words and emotions and some sense. And there's a particular breath that is done that has the intention of reclaiming, bringing back that hair of energy. And that hair energy can be this pair of glasses in here that is the thing that we recall. And then we recall another feature of the space and the wallpaper and the flowers and the TV and the window from the space. So that's one place, one event that you've been at. And then you go to the next person, the next event, and the next place, and you begin to energetically reclaim this life force that by default is feeding those memories. So that's the shamanic description of why someone says a particular word, a sentence today, and brings this reaction or response from 20 years ago, right? Because we have an energetic line tagging. If you're lucky through psychotherapy or other modalities, unconsciously we might tap this way, and that's true healing. Many times, talking about these events, all they do is reaffirm them, right? So it basically reaffirms identity, and each one of these lines of energy, 360, infinitely, are compose our identity and our way to see the world. For my students, I break it into small lists, so to make it bite-sized
Manageable.
chunks, manageable, right? So you start with, let's say, all your classmates in high school and all your classmates in college, and your life partners or sexual relationships. Some more manageable lists. The traditional modality, the traditional goal is to basically list every person you've ever met, every place you've ever been, every scene you've ever been part of, and then reclaim all of that. Why is so important? This is important because this is the ultimate freedom practice, the way I experience it. As you reclaim now significant amounts of this energy, there's several things. First, you're literally not linked or conditioned by these actions again. So it's not a process. It's not like you replace one negative belief with a positive belief, which nothing wrong with that. This goes much further to you reclaim all the beliefs, and they're not replaced with anything. They become raw life force. So now this raw life force and the freedom and the energetic fluidity that this practice brings now allows you to begin the other practices of being in this world and other worlds, on dreaming consciously, or awakening your dreams, and then shape shifting and all these other things that require significant charges of energy in order to accomplish it. Otherwise, it's just talk, right? And that's the big difference between a lesson imparted by a newbie that doesn't have a mastery of energy, and a lesson, sometimes the words are the same, a lesson imparted by a master practitioner, a master Reiki that can move energy. Now the message, the lesson, has a charge of energy, and now that is the healing power. It's not the symbols you draw in the air and the way you put your fingers. That's the choreography, but the qigong practitioners are the same. Tai Chi, they have mastered their chi, their energy. Reiki, the same. The good ones have honed their energy, so they have a bigger charge to do the healing work with. The same here. So and some people are gifted at it. Some of the teachers that you work with seem to have the gift of acquiring this energy, but there's a path for the regular mortal to get there with this process of recapitulation. So as someone begins in studying in my school and in my tutelage, this is the starting point. It's not as flashy as some of the bigger maneuvers, but is what's required to create the foundation, the energetic foundation. Also, another side effect of or main more than side, main focus on recapitulation is that lightness of being. Meaning, as we begin to see ourselves acting nonsensically over and over and over in our lives, we begin to take ourselves less seriously, one. And two, our attachments to the way I am and the way I respond and the way what I like, I don't like, all that begins to subside a little bit. When we come with all this is who I am and how I want it. The shamanic world remains a little elusive.
What you're saying also reminds me, I went to a Buddhist temple here in London, and the monk who was leading a meditation, so it was an insight meditation, which is really just focusing on your breath here and now in the moment. And he kept emphasizing, he was using his hand, so I'm using my hand now, but it's like, I like this, I don't like this. I like this, I don't like this. He's like, they're the exact same thing. You just keep hashing them out in your mind over and over. I like this, I don't like this, but there's actually no difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's we call it the bipolar mind, right?
Mm.
Is this, we, up and down, left and right, male, female, like, don't like, so imagine a pendulum, and
Mm.
energetically this works as a bit as a pendulum. So we constantly, like I was saying earlier, we this self-reflection is constantly comparing this, that,
Mm.
this, that, this, that, this, that, right? and and a certain degree of that is necessary to operate in this world. The big difference is that operating us, or now we gain conscious awareness of that process. So now we apply it surgically when we need it. We apply it when we need to communicate sometimes with people. It's easy to say, well, I like this and I don't like that. I prefer this over that. I prefer, beef over chicken. Great. Okay, that's clear. But when that becomes the essence of our existence, then there's a whole range of magic and wonder that gets bypassed.
And so, if I were to try to summarize a bit what that healing approach really is from the foundational level, because I know that the work goes much deeper and there's a lot in it than what you could actually just describe in this conversation. But it's really helping people at the foundational level. And I already think that's incredibly healing to get a sense of the different people, events, moments throughout their life that are almost like these little pockets of energy drain where they've lost potentially bits of themselves, or they're still holding on to memories or beliefs or fears or doubts associated with all those different moments in their life. And different practices might call it something different, but it's essentially getting that overview and then being able to let that go so that you're really free, so that your channel is clear, so to speak, so that you're able to actually do the work you're here to do.
In the context of this lineage and this training and this body of work, I personally don't talk that much about healing, even though
Okay.
I can pretty much heal anything. My focus is consciousness. The consciousness will
Mm.
bring the process that need to bring. I mean, the some practices, including Reiki, I'm more concerned with healing, to correcting misbalances in order to recalibrate the physical body. This happens naturally in this body of work. I typically do not focus specifically on those things. And then the concept of letting go, we're talking about using a particular practice to reclaim the life force that is
Mm.
constantly feeding these memories, these experiences. In my understanding and the way I experience it, right? This is my training. I did not study Reiki, or I did not study other things. So the way I understand it and explain it is that it's not really a letting go, it's a transmutation of the energy held in it. Because then there's a lot to be done once we get to and then so what we gain is understanding and knowledge. Understanding and knowledge, understanding and knowledge. Letting go is not something that I focus on in my teachings, because everything in our life has energy. If a behavior that you want to let go, quote unquote, is present, has a big charge of energy. Why we would let that go? We understand it fully, we gain the knowledge of it, and now that behavior is a big charge to repack our life force. And with that, then the sky's the limit. Then there's other complete set of maneuvers that had to do with utilizing all our tricks and colorful behavior and palette of behavior for energy moving maneuvers as well. So one thing that takes a moment to my students to grasp is that we don't get rid of anything. We
Mm.
don't get rid of any. Everything is integrated. Everything is transmuted into raw energy, and from there, there's a whole being that emerges that contains everything that the sum total of who you've ever been. Otherwise, we continue trying to partition ourselves. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, that kind of. And naturally, after years, then the selection and the sovereignty over our behavior is stronger than ever.
I think that's going to be a big relief to a lot of people listening
Yeah,
because it's a very common belief and thought to, oh, let go of XYZ, let it go, surrender. I'm sick to death of that word because what does that even mean? How do you just
Exactly.
let it go if it has? So, what you're describing is going to be a very welcome concept for a lot of people who are listening who have been trying to surrender for a long time. And it's really difficult to just stop something as opposed to
Right.
allowing it in to be changed, to be transformed, to be used for another purpose.
Right. Surrender like a leaf in the wind, opposed to a sailboat. You use the wind to go where you want to go. So
Mm,
both of them has some degree of surrendering. One has more sovereignty and mastery than the other. These are the basic concepts, right? Letting go and
mhm,
surrendering. I think they are well meaning. The concepts are true, and yet they create a lot of confusion. And also, what they end up feeding, because this thing about getting, you know, when I get rid of my bad habits, for instance, or my heavy behavior, or my what are they, limiting is the word they use, limiting behavior and beliefs. Well, most people can't. So what it feeds is I'm not good enough, I'm fucked up, there's something wrong with me. And that is the self-reflection again. I'm really great at this. I'm
mm.
killing it. That's self-reflection. I suck at this. I said it at the beginning of the call. I suck. And for most people, they surrender and letting go and the limiting beliefs, and then they do their process and they do the visualization, and then next time they have the situation, the same behavior comes out. And they,
Mm.
oh fuck, I'm not getting it. All these things, I need another workshop, but I need another, whatever.
Oh, yeah. The workshop cycle.
Well, I mean, it's an industry that makes billions of dollars in this world, uh,
Yeah.
selling healing to people that don't heal, but they get the next
Mm.
fix and the next fix and the next fix.
It's a dangerous cycle
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
just feeds that belief of not good enough, as you said, and always needing to learn more and more. I mean, I see this in the coaching industry all the
totally.
time, especially when coaches, and it's like there's no end to the insecurity that comes with trying to figure something out in someone else's pathway without really getting to make it your own or understand what that means or feels like for you. I see a lot of honestly pain from people who really genuinely want to do good work and are not able to get out of that cycle of like fear or doubt or someone else must have the answer to help me through this.
Right, right. Well, insecurities, right? So we don't get rid of the insecurities. We stop running from them, turn around and face
Mm,
them. And now we have a game. So the moment you get to understand your insecurities through and through, the moment you gain insight about those insecurities, and they're not evil. They're not here to. It's just a certain level of consciousness.
mm.
They're not bad. They're not good. There's energy that's being deployed in a certain manner, and since we are cyclical beings, unless we deploy differently, it's going to deploy the same way.
What I really wanna know is how does it feel for you to have this book out in the world? Like, how does that feel that
Mm.
these students of yours have put this together and breathed collectively into it? What is that like for you?
Well, that book was the graduation process for their master level. I'm incredibly proud. I mean, each of them have exceeded my expectations, and they stick with it with incredible discipline and commitment through many years. And I don't make it easy, And so it's very challenging to work with me. Each of them found their own authentic transmission. I mean, you've read through those pages. They're all very different. They're not cookie
Yeah.
cutter. They don't do things the same way. Each of them found their pathway, their own transmission, and they're very distinct from each other. And if you meet them live, also you will see what I mean. I mean, they just feel different, and each of them, what they have in common is this strength, this sense of empowerment, this reclamation of who they are in an ethereal, energetic way, and the freedom to come in and out identities as well. So I'm extremely proud, and their lives have grown exponentially. Their businesses, their relationships, their marriages, their mothers, their sisters, their wives, their uh, teachers, they are coaches, they are therapists, they are so they're deeply in the world, carrying on this beautiful work.
I love that these are modern women and that this whole process and all of this work, while it can feel on the outside, people who are not experiencing this on their own, it can really feel like a separated world. And yet here it is, just like real women of the earth also doing this incredible work.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, and also just listening to what you've shared with us today, I mean, you are really a bridge for those two worlds of helping people to learn how to experience both, to be on both sides of that veil at the same time.
Yeah, humbly, I learned that from the wolf. The wolf is considered by indigenous traditions the pathfinder.
Mm.
So I've incorporated that into my teaching as opening, the gate opener, a portal opener, and a pathfinder, not for me, but for my students. And then I get out of the way. I don't have any hangups or giving them any kind of imprint from me beyond what comes through. But I want them to find their way of teaching, their way of impacting the world. And also, one thing that I told them from the beginning is that I don't develop students, I teach peers. So for the time being, I am their mentor and their guide. But my goal is that they become my peers and we can carry this work together. And many of them are reaching those levels.
That is beautiful. So, for people who are listening and they're thinking, okay, I want to know more about what Teo's doing in the world, and maybe some want to find out how they can actually train with you or work with you. How can people, A, work with you or be able to become a student? And how can they get in touch with you?
Well, the book is on Amazon and so forth. So if they want to, that would be a great introduction for those that are curious to get that book and skim through it.
And I'll link to that, by the way, in all the show notes so you'll know where to
Thank you.
find it.
Thank you. So then there's my team put together a website that I haven't fully seen yet, but I think it's up, is teoalfero.com. And that has the books and also some of the programs. A great introduction is a monthly fireside conversation that I offer for free. It's the schedule will be somewhere in there in the website, because it's a way to come and hang out with other people. I do a little bit of teaching, but mostly it's about people that are carrying on their practices. They come with questions, so I help them guide their own practices. It's a great place to get a taste of what the work is, and those happen every month, and they're free. And then there's a whole 7-year curve of training that people can embark on. But I think the initial point, and then the other piece is not only working with me. My students have become extraordinary teachers themselves. I love it when people come to the fireside conversations and they hire one of my students. They say one of them says something and they feel like, oh, they feel an affinity and they want to work on something in particular, and they start working with them. I love building community. Everything starts with feeling the calling. If it's anything that your listeners heard during this call that pinged them somehow, I encourage that ping will go away if you don't act on it. Every time that ping will go away if we don't act on it. So act on it. Act on it. Get the book. Come to a fireside. This is not about selling anything to anybody. It's about, if you had the ping, we'll grab you. We'll catch you. You have a net that you can land on.
Hmm. The website is up and it's beautiful. I've seen it. So
Good. Great.
we'll
Great. I'll
link
check
to
it out.
that as well.
Good.
So, is there any, last words of wisdom or advice that you might give to someone who's just starting out? They're just starting to have this awakening moment. And yeah, is there anything that you'd like to just share to someone who's beginning on their path?
Well, first of all, if you had that awakening moment, you're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. That happens to a lot of people, and it's part of our birthright. We carry that dormant abilities our entire lives, and if we are lucky, there is something shakes us up, and and we pierce that thin veil into something bigger that we can't describe. So nothing's wrong with you. There's a lot of people like that, and so find your community. That's one. Secondly, is the mind will give you all kinds of reasons why not to do it, not to pursue that insight or that strike of genius. That's the time where our discipline and strength to keep taking steps in the direction of that insight and need to put into practice. The third piece is sobriety. So strength, but with sobriety. What I mean by sobriety is not from alcohol and drug abuse, which I also condone that, but not the abuse, but the sobriety. Yeah, the sobriety to begin to embark on the journey of 1,000 miles, one step at a time. Right? Sometimes we might be hurting our lives, so we have this insight, and this insight is going to save us. So we plunge into it, quit our job, shave our head, and go meditate for 10 hours. Well, you're going to end up meditating on the bridge. So the sobriety of the ability to carry our life as usual while beginning to open this other world on the side. So we are sorcerers and witches and spiritual awakened beings of our time. That means we are in the world doing the things of the world. You own a phone, you are in the internet, you clock in and out on a job, you provide your service, you pay your taxes, you rent your house. We do the things of the world, and we create the energetic mass necessary to live almost like parallel lives. We live a life in spirit and a life in the world. We call it walking here with one foot here and there, able to walk with one foot in each world, which is a big area of training in the school. So you're not crazy. Keep walking and walk with sobriety.
Wow. That is brilliant. I am so happy that we're closing on that note. That is a very well received message in my own life. And I am certain in the lives of many, many, many people who are listening to allow themselves to continue living life while they're also having this moment of awakening. I am really grateful that we've had this time together. I thank you
Me
so
too.
much for, yeah, really making the time and being here and just sharing so generously so much of your wisdom and what you're doing in the world with us. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you, Amanda, for the opportunity to talk. I mean, it was a super fun conversation. Thank you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in and see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give the podcast a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And don't forget to hit subscribe and follow along so you never miss a new episode.